Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to Atlanta Regional Commission's webinar series. My name is Melissa Roberts and I'm happy to welcome you today to our webinar on accessible engagement tools. This webinar we've been planning for a while, and we're very excited to feature some leaders in the disability rights organizations throughout Atlanta. Before we get started, let's see. I would like to go over some information about the platform and interface we are using. I know some of you have heard this before, so we'll keep it brief, but we always expect potentially new attendees. So you'll notice in the top left hand of your screen a control panel that looks a lot like this image on the screen. You can use this to check your audio settings, to insert questions in the chat box to us. Right now, all attendees are in listen-only mode, so you are on mute, which means that we want you to communicate with us through the chat box, any questions you have about the webinar itself, or questions for our panelists. We will have a recording of this webinar hosted on ARC's webinar library page, which we will put in the chat box, a link to that. You can also see a link to live captioning if you would like to find captions for the audio for today. So with that said, I would like to introduce our moderator today. Our moderator is Ms. Ginger Reagans. She is with us here at the Atlanta Regional Commission in our Aging and Independent Services group. Ginger is a Benjamin Rose Institute Aging Care Consultant. She also works with our Aging and Disability Resource Connections Assistive Technology Program, and she's a certified aging in place specialist. She is an advocate for assistive technology, and in that vein has testified before the Georgia State Senate with their Georgia State Senate Health Committee requesting additional funding support for this technology. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ginger and allow her to share more about today's webinar and our speakers. Thank you so much, Ginger.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Accessible Engagement Tools. We have a great program planned, and we appreciate our panelists taking time out and being here today with all of us. We are asking the question, what can the disability community teach us about improving digital engagement? As local governments and planners seek to increase digital engagement, they can learn a lot from the disability community about generating accessible tools and inclusive engagement techniques. Our talented panelists are from 3 disability rights organizations and will engage in a robust conversation about accessible engagement tools. Our panelists are Shelley Simmons. She is the Executive Director of the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. We have Liz Persad, who is the Program and Outreach Manager at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. We also have Danny Housley. He is the Assistive Technology Acquisitions Manager at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, and Kate Brady. She is the Deputy Director for the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. Shelley, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Shelley, I am trying, oh, there we go. You are unmuted now.
Thank you, first of all, to the Atlanta Regional Commission for extending this invitation to speak with all of you. I hope that we might be able to provide you with some information regarding our organization. Once again, my name is Shelley. I am the Executive Director for the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. And next slide. I'm sure that probably some of you, next slide, are wondering, well, what is the Statewide Independent Living Council? SILC, G-A, S-I-L-C, G-A is our acronym. And basically, we are a federally mandated organization. We are here to identify societal barriers to independent living and to collaborate with centers for independent living, rehabilitation services, and other related entities to remove those barriers and to increase the supports and services needed to create independent living communities. We also hold quarterly meetings. It is our main responsibility to develop and monitor the state plan for independent living. And actually, every state within the nation has a silk office. We work closely with our partners, trying to also help identify and remove those barriers. We work closely with these centers for independent living. And these centers for independent living are the consumer entity. They work closely with individuals with disabilities. We have 9 centers throughout the state. Next slide, please. That perform these services. These centers are staffed by individuals with disabilities, and they provide 5 core services, which are information and referral, peer support, personal assistance advocacy, independent living skills training, and transition services. And depending on the region, some of the centers have additional services that they provide. All services provided are to assist individuals with disabilities to live independently within their chosen communities. And once again, let me just kind of slide back a little bit. The statewide Independent Living Council, we're the policy-driven entity. So we also work closely with our legislature to help create policy change. We do not provide direct services, and we are a non-residential organization. Next slide, please. And these there are 9 centers that are throughout the state. We have the Northwest Georgia Center for Independent Living, which covers their offices are located in Rome, the green area. Disability Link, the light green area. They provide services to the metro area. We have Disability Resource Center, the orange, the upper north east area. Multiple Choices, the offices are in Athens. Walton Options, they are located in Augusta, the purple. Disability Connections in the center, the brown. Their offices are located in Macon. We have Access to Independence, located in Columbus, the purple area. And we have Bainbridge, Bain Incorporated. They have, the main office is in Bainbridge, and the partially shaded orange area, they have a satellite office in Valdosta. And then there's Life Incorporated to the far right, the kind of, I'll call it salmon area. Their offices are located in Savannah, and the satellite office is located in Jessup. And next slide, please. Some of the things I guess that I think are important for people to know, and really kind of what the centers actually do and what the SILP actually does. Some of the work that we've been able to do is help partner with some of our community agencies, other organizations that help with people with disabilities, is the Money Follows the Person and the Balance Incentive Payment Program. Basically, this particular program helps transition individuals out of nursing homes and or institutions to be able to live within a community. And each year we try to advocate for additional funding that will actually help transition individuals. With the Money Follows the Person, or well, also what we call home and community-based services, a lot of times just very few supports are needed for an individual to be able to live within a community. And so, again, we try to work closely with the legislature in order to I have money allotted for this particular program. We've been very successful with that. We work closely with the Department of Aging Services, or excuse me, the Division of Aging Services, or DAS, to help with these transitions. We have successfully advocated for the reinstatement of home access funds. We work closely with the Department of Community Affairs. This work continues. We've been asking for a $500,000 annual allotment of funds to help with individuals have their homes made accessible so that they can safely navigate their homes. And sometimes, excuse me, this can be as simple as a ramp, or it can be as detailed as a bathroom modification, kitchen modification, anything like that. We have successfully advocated for state funds for our center expansion. And if you can recall, I apologize, but back on the map, there was a white area, what we call an unserved area. Basically, that was an area that is not covered by a Center for Independent Living. And so we're trying to work diligently to have those areas completely filled in. The partially shaded area was state funded money, whereas the other centers received both state and federal funding. Now, one of the big things that we were able to help support the Georgia with the Georgia Developmental Disability, GC, Georgia Council on Developmental Disability, successfully advocate for Gracie's Law. And Gracie's Law basically does not permit discrimination for individuals with disabilities with organ transplant. And we felt that that was something that was very instrumental, and we were happy to partner with GCDD. And those are just some of the recent things, but the silk has been established for nearly 30 years now. And so a lot of work has been done over the years. Next slide. Public engagement, I guess this is why that we're here. We believe that it's a process. And again, as I stated, we've been in existence for over nearly 30 years. And for us, it is to be intentional and to think intersectionality. And that basically is a complex, cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, classism, ableism, combine and overlap. Basically, all it says is that we're all intertwined. We need each other, and many things kind of intersect. And what affects me also affects you, and what affects you affects me. So some of the techniques for engagement, we have looked outside the box. We try to reach out to a large group of people. We want to be intentional in expanding our nets. We don't always want to have to preach to the choir. So we actually did a mini documentary on the 30th anniversary of the ADA. We did that for this year, was actually the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I apologize, I live in a world of acronyms. But the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. We tried to do educational videos. Because we are a statewide entity, it's challenging to be able to reach a large sum of people. And so we try to do that through our educational videos. We try to remain active on social media with updates, usually on time, but at least every day, updates with our Facebook pages and YouTube as well. Our outreach and networking to organizations, agencies, and nonprofits. Once again, we want to be sure that, again, that we try to change our delivery. We want to make sure that we engage not only youth, but seniors. And then again, just anybody else that who may be directly or indirectly affected by disability, whether it's a parent that might have to come and live with their children, or a child that has broken a leg, or anything like that in regards to accessibility, or people who may have just become newly disabled. We try to gain access to councils and various boards. There's a model that is within the disability community that basically says nothing about us without us. We don't believe that decisions should be made about people with disabilities without engaging or asking questions, finding out exactly how people with disabilities feel, and being able to offer suggestions on policy. And then community events. We try to have annual events. We have something that's called Strengthening Independent Living. And we did not do it this year, but we tried to engage the community to be able to give them more information about what's going on in the community and people with disabilities. This year we have the 8830, Nothing About Us Without Us. A very nice event that was at the Center for Civil and Human Rights. Was open to the public. We usually have a disability day at the Capitol to be able to engage our legislature and let them know that some things that we are being concerned about. But again, because statewide Independent Living Council, we are policy and we want to be engaging, it's important for us to make sure that our meetings are accessible. When we were meeting face to face, to make sure that the buildings were accessible. Tried to make sure that they were on public transportation routes. We make sure that we have ASL available, various formats for people with visual impairments, where there's large print. We try to make sure that we get information out at least 2 weeks ahead of time in regards to our agenda and any other materials that we can make as accessible as possible. So it really all depends on what we're doing, but we really try to be intentional and try to make sure that we have accessibility covered. With our video, we're now trying to get that in Spanish as well. So again, we want to make sure that we think outside the box, but because we feel that the information that we are able to provide not only affects our community, but everyone else involved as well. Next slide. And so, I'm giving everyone else the opportunity to speak, but please, we're located downtown Decatur. We are actually here in the office Monday through Thursday. We have a YouTube page where our educational videos are up, SILGA, or Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia, and also our Facebook page. We would love for you to visit and check us out. And we would love your engagement, your participation. So I'll just pass this back to Ginger and let everyone else speak. And I'm sure that hopefully we'll have some engaging questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Shelley. Liz and Danny, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name is Liz Prasad. I am the Program and Outreach Manager specifically for Tools for Life, which is housed under the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. I'm going to take just a moment to talk a little bit about CIDI, touch on TFL, and I'm going to toss it over to my team member, Danny Housley, who's going to dive a little bit deeper into our assistive technology services with Tools for Life. But as I mentioned, my name is Liz. I come to you from a center within Georgia Tech at the College of Design, the center is called the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, or we often just say CIDI for short. As Shelley said, we all live in a world full of acronyms, so CIDI. Our center focuses on services and research in the world of accessibility. We have a lot of production departments within CIDI, and so our production departments actually focus on Braille transcription and dissemination of Braille materials, captioning, and described media services. So many of you are probably familiar with captioning. We actually have one of our captionists on the line with us today. Heather Johnson is on, doing an absolutely wonderful job captioning this presentation today. And so that, again, that's one of our services. E-text is another service that we offer at CIDI. And that is basically taking your materials, your paper materials, and turning them into accessible electronic documents. That's something that I absolutely benefit from throughout my life. I actually remember being in college one semester, I had 17 books I had to carry on my personal person at any given time. And so somebody who's using a power wheelchair, that was actually really difficult. Services like CIDI and our e-text department didn't exist back then. It wasn't easy to actually access. And so here we are living in a world where, as simple as it is to take paper materials and turn it into electronic documents, where all of a sudden now I can read it on my phone, I can read it on my computer, on my tablet, I can have my assistive technology actually read it to me, which is incredibly awesome. So very grateful for that service as well too. We do so much in the space of user testing, ICT accessibility. We have a whole team at CIDI that focuses on website accessibility. So not only are we making sure our documents and our books are fully accessible, but any websites that we push out are accessible, but we also offer that service to provide consultation and remediation to other entities out there as well too. And then of course, last but not least, Tools for Life, which is the assistive technology program in Georgia. And we offer assistive technology services and devices to individuals throughout the state of Georgia. And again, that's specifically where I am the program and outreach manager. As many of you may or may not know, there is one Assistive Technology Act program in every state in the country, as well as the 6 territories. And I'm actually going to toss it over to my team member, Danny Housley, who's going to talk a little bit more about the specific services that we offer within Tools for Life. So Danny.
Yes, good afternoon. So I am Danny Housley. I'm the Assistive Technology Acquisition Manager with Tools for Life at CIDI. So Tools for Life, Liz mentioned all of the wonderful services that we do at CIDI. So CIDI, they focus on making the materials accessible, and at Tools for Life, we really look at what are the items that you need to access the material, whether it's high, medium, or low tech. So as you said, every state and territory has a program like ours, but ours is the best. But we have 2 big parts to our mission for Tools for Life. We have access to assistive technology and acquisition of assistive technology. The access part is handled through our training and outreach. We do a lot of presentations, a lot of webinars, especially a lot of webinars now. Oftentimes we would do a lot of in-person trainings as well, but that is on pause right now. So you can still engage with us online. And with our trainings, we always did have an online aspect to the things that we would give. So we would be in person, we would have people come into our office and our training room, but we would also always have an online aspect for people that couldn't make it or for people that did need that accommodation. So we've been looking at ways of including people well before the pandemic and just trying to make sure that everybody has an opportunity despite what part of the state and sometimes despite what part of the country you might be in. We also do a lot of demonstrations of equipment, and we moved those to being virtual now too. Again, it's something where we always try to accommodate individuals. If we couldn't make it out to Bainbridge on a couple of days' notice, we would always try to set up some kind of virtual component, just to make sure that people did have that access. And now we're doing a lot more shipping of equipment, making sure that it's sanitized, cleaning it when it comes back in. There's a lot of stuff that we had to adjust to on that front. So that's access. And then we also have our lending library of equipment. And like I mentioned, we're shipping a lot of things. We used to do a lot of, meeting people, handing off the device, and then, getting some feedback from them afterwards. But now it's a little different. So that's the access. The acquisition part is where I spend a lot of my time. So that's the other part of our mission is once we've demonstrated all of these wonderful devices, once we've helped somebody identify what solution may work best for them in their particular situation, then we look at how do you actually get it? What are the funding avenues that a person can pursue? And, the pandemic for a lot of the stuff that I do didn't really have a huge impact other than in-person trainings, because I work with people all over the state when it comes to funding and acquisition. And one of our programs, Credit Able, we have always been very flexible with how people can apply for that program. So Credit Able is our alternative financing program for the state. So it's a low interest loan program specifically for people with disabilities in Georgia. And we have, years ago, we made our application accessible and electronic. If somebody does not have internet access, because there's a vast swaths of Georgia that are very rural and internet access is not always guaranteed. So we can do things over the phone. We have mailed things to individuals. We've used our partners across the state to help with getting applications done. So we've always been very flexible with that. And then providing a lot of resources over the phone. I talk on the phone almost as much as I talk on webinars. So reaching people in that way has been very great. It's ensured that we can still keep working with folks and moving forward despite some of the social distancing and the inability to, move about as we are accustomed to. So both of those parts of our mission, the access and the acquisition part, work together so that we can help people find solutions so that they can live, learn, work, and play in the community of their choice. And all of those areas are equally important. We want to look at that holistic experience. We want to hit all those aspects of life so that people really know what they have access to have access to their community and to information and to their friends and family. So that's Tools for Life in a very big nutshell.
All right, thank you, Liz and Danny. All right, now Kate, you're our last panelist up. Turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. And thank you to the Atlanta Regional Commission for having the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities present. And I just want to second all my wonderful colleagues, Liz, Danny, and Shelley, for their excellent points. So I'll just talk a little bit about what the Georgia Council does regarding our work overall and our strategies for public engagement. So next slide, please. All right, so who is GCDD? The Georgia Council works alongside and on behalf of our fellow Georgians who live their lives with developmental disabilities that impact them in a variety of ways, including but not limited to learning, communication, mental and behavioral health, and sometimes mobility. Folks with disabilities are our neighbors, family members, colleagues, and friends who, like all of us, rely on a safe and supportive world around them to thrive. Next slide, please. So the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities is one of DD councils in each of the US states and territories. We are mandated by the Federal Developmental Disabilities Act and a part of the DD network, as it's called, where in each state there is also a protection and advocacy organization. You'll see there at the bottom purple part of that circular image. And then at the top left, you'll see it says UCEDS, or University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. In Georgia, we have two, one at Georgia State, which is called the Center for Leadership and Disability, and one at UGA, which is called the Institute for Human Development and Disability. UCEDS provide research, do outreach, PNAs provide protection from harm, do individual advocacy, file lawsuits on behalf of people with disabilities, and DD Council's work through grant making, policy advocacy, and coalition building. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next slide, we're looking at what is the role of a council. And I just want to hit on this real quick, that we think of our work in terms of systems change, individual and family advocacy, capacity building, and equity or targeted disparity, which is built right in to the DD Act. So we're recognizing that there's intersectionality between the issues of gender, race, sexual orientation, and discrimination with discrimination based on disability. And so we look at what are we doing to change the system so that it works better for people with disabilities? How are we advocating for and with people with disabilities and their families? How are we helping organizations improve, grow their practices, seed new ways of providing support? And how are we being sure that we acknowledge and offset any disparities in outcomes and be sure that the people that we're serving represent the diversity of the state? Next slide, please. So our vision, very simply, is an integrated community life for persons with developmental disabilities, their families, friends, neighbors, and all who support them. And we believe that the state and any community is at its best when the policies and programs include all of us, and that no one should be left out of the opportunity to contribute. Next slide. Thank you. Our mission is to bring about social and policy changes that promote opportunities for people with DD and their families to live, learn, work, play, and worship in Georgia's communities. Next slide. Thank you. So our work occurs through thought leadership, grant making, advocacy, policy analysis, partnership, and coalition development. Next slide, please. Our partners are hopefully all of you on the phone or the GoToWebinar. Legislators, first and foremost, people with developmental disabilities and their families. And I want to echo Shelley's point about the disabilities community's conviction around nothing about us without us. And all DD councils nationally are comprised of at least 60% of people who have some lived experience with disabilities. We also partner with state agencies that provide publicly funded services. Those are systems like vocational rehabilitation, Medicaid waivers, Social Security, so that those public resources are being provided in an equitable and effective way. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I thought for this session, it would be important to look at what are our convictions around engagement. We do have a pretty robust public information department, which I'll get into a little bit, but just wanted to look at a few key principles. Next slide, please. Thank you. So bridging the digital divide. And so we know that according to the World Health Organization, about 15% of the world's population lives with some form of disability, and 2 to 4% of those experience significant disabilities. That means that if the world population has reached 7.5 billion people, then there are a great many people who do not have access to technology. And when we acknowledge the dramatic underemployment of people with disabilities, then we know that people with disabilities are very much at risk of being on the sidelines for the digital revolution. 54% of households, according to the Pew Foundation, use the internet, compared to 81% of households with no disability in the US. So GCDD is committed to that. We've noticed and enjoyed all of the wonderful opportunities for public engagement across the state and into places we hadn't previously been able to physically reach. And yet we're aware that that never means we're reaching everyone that we could. Next slide, please. Oh, you're already there. Well, I'm sorry. So universal design, and there are some experts in universal design on the phone, so I won't go into the details here. But simply put, universal design is the design of products and environments so that they are usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Good friend and colleague of mine talk about that in terms of baking in the access, right? So don't build a ramp on the back door, but think about a zero grade entry. I'm a wheelchair user, so that one comes naturally to me. But when we think about universal design and technology and public engagement, that means things like using plain language and sharing multiple formats, and we can get into that more. But if you're interested, I'd highly recommend you look up the 7 principles of universal design. Next slide. Thank you. And so the last slide I'll share is that representation matters. So when you're thinking about public engagement, we know that we want to have authentic representation of people with disabilities and their lives. We no longer want to tolerate stories that rely on templates of deficit or the heroic exception. Both of those are things we see often in the media. The heroic exception, quite simply, is despite a myriad of complex barriers, Joey was triumphant in gaining employment. And that alleviates the burden on the system and convinces the audience that they ought to worry most about Joey and least about all those folks who are still struggling with those barriers the system has created. Templates of deficit, you're probably familiar in terms of caricatures of qualities of disability that we see in fictional characters. And if you're interested in that, I'd recommend the Frameworks Institute. It's really been a powerful resource for us. So we'll move to strategies, the strategies that GCDD has used. Next slide, please. And then one more, if you don't mind. Thank you. So in our public information work, we publish a quarterly magazine and a newsletter in between each quarter. We are available on social media through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and a website. All of those linked there. So if we send the slides afterwards, you'll have access to those. We work closely with the media to ensure that those stories that are told in a way that we find authentically represents the person's experience. And, you know, we've had them in this year, we've had the most notable engagement response through our storytelling project, which initially aimed to acknowledge that in advocacy, there are no numbers without people, and there are no stories without numbers. And so we wanted to have captured a variety of stories of folks whose disability had impacted their access to the life that they wanted, or the system had impacted their life, their access to that life. So we collected stories in every legislative district around the state, turned those into a wonderful website, then a legislative book so that every legislator had access to those stories. There's now a podcast and a film called 6,000 and Waiting, and we'll be sure that the Regional Commission has access to those materials. And then we've also hosted a weekly and now monthly session on the impact of COVID-19 so that folks have a place to come get resources and information. Next slide, please. So real quickly, a message manual has really provided some important guidance for the council around how we want to engage our various elements by formalizing everything from our vision, mission, partners, our outcome challenges, what we want to measure in terms of progress markers, strategies, tactics, and practices. And you'll see there it includes an identity map, a brand narrative, and audience scaffolding. Really a wonderful tool. Next slide, please. So we also do public policy advocacy. And through this work, much like the Statewide Independent Living Council, we host advocacy days throughout the legislative session to support the community in collaborating with their representatives in the General Assembly. We also host weekly public policy calls, publish a newsletter, and have an annual public policy fellowship that hopefully launches someone into a dynamic career in policy around disability. Next slide, please. And last but not least, all councils are grant-making organizations. Our funding goes to advance competitive integrated employment, transition from school to work, health equity, supported decision-making, the development of self-advocates, asset-based community development, and cross-disability coalitions. Next slide, please. And one more, please. Thank you. So in looking at the tools and techniques, at minimum, we'd advise for universal design, always say who is speaking, always use plain language, always hire CART for live transcription. Thank you to the Atlanta Regional Commission for having them on board. Always offer ASL. We have a wonderful interpreter today. Send the materials ahead of time and offer alternative formats such as large print or electronic materials, as Liz was mentioning. Next slide, please. In terms of platform considerations in this digital age, we've been committed to ensuring that there's a phone-only option that allows for folks who don't have internet to access this session. We evaluate whether the platform can be used on a mobile device, how well can screen readers navigate that platform, and is the navigation intuitive and self-explanatory. One more slide, please. Next one. Thank you. So ideally, and I notice I didn't do this here, you would say what you're going to say it, and then say you said it, right? We've all learned that for years. You might color code the sections of your agenda by topic, keep the layout crisp and clean and simple, and include images of concepts as you're able to. Next slide, questions, and then I'll turn it back to the moderator. One more slide there, I believe, it's with my contact information. There we go. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Kate. Thank you everyone for sharing your information with us today. We appreciate all that you're doing in this field. I know everyone has gained some insight today that you can possibly take back and use in your operations. At this time, we will review any questions that have come in. I do see a few. I will read the questions and we will take as many as the time allows. A reminder to everyone, it is not too late to submit your question in the chat box and we will be glad to address as many as we can. All right, so our first question went to CIDI. The question was, is there a cost for nonprofit websites to be assessed at CIDI to see how we stock up? Is there a cost for that, a nonprofit rate? And Liz sent a link, and of course, Olivia has put it in the chat box, but it is to cidi.gatech.edu/membership. And then a follow-up question was also, how do you find out what tools are available that is to be loaned out from CIDI? Is that on the same page, Liz? And Liz responded back, that's through Tools for Life, a program within CIDI, and she sent a direct link to the Tools for Life website. And she said you can also reach out to she and Danny, and they'll be glad to get you connected to the right people. Liz or Danny, do you have anything else to add to that? And if I could have all the panelists to come online, please, so we can see everyone's picture.
Thank you, Ginger. No, we just encourage folks to visit our website. The link that I provided there was specifically to the membership page on the CIDI website, but please take a moment to browse all aspects of it. You'll learn more about Braille production, e-text, captioning, more about our research, and more about our UX initiatives as well too. And then of course, you can still access the Tools for Life website off of CIDI, but there is a separate link there, and that'll give you more information about our program. We are actively redesigning the TFL website, so I'm excited to say that in a couple of weeks it'll be fresh and new and all sorts of great information, but everything up there is still accurate, up to date, but absolutely encourage you to check it out. We have all sorts of wonderful resources on our website. Some of the funding initiatives Danny was talking about, you can easily access. We have an app finder. That's just another way to get more, dive deeper into the world of assistive technology as well too. But again, we're available and you guys can reach out to us anytime for anything specific.
All right, great, thank you. We have another question. This is for Kate. The 2010 numbers from GCDD seems low compared to current access to the internet. When will Pew update the data?
That is a wonderful question. Whomever is a data mind like I am, and I wish I had included more recent data. So I don't know that it hasn't already been updated, and I'll be happy to look into that and share some updated findings with the moderators so those can be distributed.
Great, thank you, Kate. We have another question. How Ability, formerly Able To, they say, we'd like to facilitate a gathering of more stories, especially performing artists on the disability spectrum. How do we make this happen to add to this great effort?
I'm so excited that you're interested in that storytelling project. If you'll go to the GCDD website, which I'll plunk in the chat there for you, there'll be a storytelling link, and we have a dedicated email where you can reach out to the folks managing that project and see what's possible there.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, and we have another question. This is for Shelley. What are the goals in the new state plan?
The new state plan, which actually just begun October 1st. One of our goals is disabilities. Georgians with disabilities are prepared in an emergency situation. We know that with COVID, things have changed dramatically, but also because Georgia is also prone to hurricanes. So we do a lot of emergency preparedness for the coastal region and help assist with some of our other centers for independent living. Our second goal is Georgians with disabilities will have adequate access to transit, especially within our rural communities, trying to help set up additional paratransit services and or other options, trying to make sure, work with some of our other organizations that provide transportation, make sure that their vehicles are accessible, and give them other options other than just using non-emergency medical transportation. Georgians with disabilities have access to resources and choices for a wide range of accessible, affordable, discrimination-free, and safe housing. You would not believe how housing is a huge issue. And this is really across the nation. But to find something that is accessible and affordable can be very challenging, especially now with all these new developments going on within the metro area. It's really pushing a lot of people who may be on fixed incomes out on the outskirts and away from public transportation. So that's a huge goal for us as well. But those are pretty much the four things, and just making sure that people with disabilities are valued in all community life as equal citizens. And hence, this is why we did our mini documentary on the Americans with Disabilities Act. We know why, many people don't know why we have it. So we kind of tell the story of the past, the present, and what the future looks like with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So those are some our goals and objectives for the next 3 years.
Got it. Thank you, Shelley. The next question, we think it's for Kate. What platform have you found that fits the needs you listed?
You know, we have the tech expert on the line, but I can say that at GCDD, we have relied predominantly on Zoom. Just now we've recognized that Microsoft Teams isn't a great fit for screen readers and for integrated captioning, but I'd love if the question asker is willing to let Danny or Liz weigh in, because I don't know that I'm the expert.
Sure. No, Liz, Danny, please share your expertise.
Well, it's important to know that there isn't one platform out there that's going to solve everybody's solution, because we're looking for it every minute of every day at Tools for Life and at CIDI, and we actually use a number of them. We do use Microsoft Teams. That is something that we use within Georgia Tech, within the USG network, within CIDI. The automated captions actually work well for folks that need it. Obviously, if there's opportunities to have a live captioner on, like how Heather's on with us today, that's always preferred. We've recently dove deeper into Zoom as well too. Just on a personal note, Zoom is for me the easiest to operate and I think the most accessible, but that is something that our UX team within CIDI is constantly keeping an eye on, looking at a number of different platforms out there and keeping up to date on the updates and just what's working well for folks. So we can offer advice on, you know, if you're going to have X amount of folks that need ASL interpretation, maybe this particular platform would be better, as opposed to if you're, you know, offering a focus group or something like that. So there's just different ways to kind of work around it. So Danny, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw out there. Yeah, as you said, there's no one size fits all. You know, for years and years, the National Federation of the Blind, we've been using conference calls and we've been using Zoom primarily because a lot of our folks, especially in rural parts of Georgia, don't have internet access. So you need that dial-in option. And since it's the National Federation of the Blind, we don't really need to see each other. So a phone call is fine. But when we start working with our colleagues that are deafblind, then we have to look at more inclusive platforms. But Zoom has kind of been the default for a lot of organizations, and it's what's worked well for, you know, the National Federation of the Blind, and both the Rural Independent Living Conference and the National Council on Independent Living used Zoom quite successfully this year to host their conventions. And it was, you know, again, it made sure that everybody had access to the captions, to ASL, and to described video and presentations. So yeah, Zoom is kind of the default. It checks a lot of the boxes that people need.
All right, we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap up doing a final reflection. Do any of you know what colleges are now offering post-secondary education for adults with disabilities?
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think we put in the chat that if you're interested in more information specifically about inclusive post-secondary ed programs, you can go to the Include College website, which is www.gaipsec.org. And the current schools are Kennesaw State, University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Columbus State, East Georgia State College, Georgia Southern, Albany Tech, and University of West Georgia.
All right, great, Kate, thank you. All right, we have about 5 minutes. We're going to wrap up, but first I'd like to ask each of you, do you have a final reflection from this webinar that you'd like to share, or something that you would like for our audience participants to take away?
Yes, this is Shelley. I don't profess to be the expert on accessibility, but what I do know is that Tools for Life and the CIDI have been excellent support for the Statewide Independent Living Council. What I'm still learning is that even when you have these accessible platforms like Zoom and everything else, you still have to be intentional to make sure. And something that I did not do today was describe myself for those who may not, for visual impairments. So I should have, said, I'm Shelley, I'm a Black woman, short haircut, 50-ish, give some type of, wearing a gray sweater, something like that. I know that's important. And with our educational videos, what I did not take into consideration, especially when it came to making it completely accessible, we thought we were doing something when we had captioning. But I also know that and received a lot of flack is that we did not have the auto description. And so that's something that we're working on, trying to make sure that all of our videos have auto descript, have captioning, and doing our best to make sure that we have ASL. And then on a personal note, just to speak slowly for our interpreters. I have a tendency to speed up, but just to kind of make sure that I remind myself to slow down and to make sure that not only captioning is correct, but the ASL interpreter is able to interpret correctly. So
Yeah.
reach out to Tools for Life.
Thank you, Shelley.
Well,
Anyone else?
I just wanted
This
to
is
thank
Danny.
Shelley. Oh, sorry. I just want to thank Shelley for the shout out, but just reiterate what she said. I appreciated what you said, Shelley, about the intention moving forward. I mean, there are a lot of accessibility aspects in place already, right? But there's so much more that we can be doing, and I think the intention is important moving forward, and making sure that you're aware of your audience that's going to be on your training, your event, your conference, what have you. And yeah, reach out to us. We are looking at all sorts of unique ways to host exhibit halls and to do all sorts of fun things. So yeah, let us know, and we'd be happy to talk to you. But sorry, Danny, I think I cut you off. So
You're good.
what else is
I
new?
was just going to say, thinking about the online engagement, it makes me think about how a lot of us in the disability community went to virtual platforms before it was cool, because of the inaccessibility of the communities that we live in, the lack of transportation, the lack of being able to meet in person before there was a pandemic, for various reasons. So whether it's because you're a statewide agency or it's because you're working with folks that just can't get out of the home, we have been exploring these online options, telephone options for a very long time because of the barriers that we face in the real world, and then tackling the barriers we're facing in the virtual as well.
All right, Kate.
Sure. Well, I appreciate my fellow panelists' points, absolutely. And I just want to pivot, recognizing Danny's point about our duration of effort around the virtual, that both in the virtual and in person, the foundational need is to presume that there's value in reaching people with disabilities in your public engagement strategies, and that if they're not in the room, it's because they're missing. It's not because you didn't need them, or it wasn't pertinent, or it wasn't relevant, because again, we show up in all other demographic groups that you're probably already targeting. And so, so we're here to help make sure that you can make those connections and reach those audiences.
All right, thank you. Stay tuned for future webinar announcements coming soon to your email box and our chat box. All of our webinars are recorded and placed in our ARC webinar library. You can check out our past topics at atlantaregional.org/webinars and share with colleagues and friends. On behalf of the Atlanta Regional Commission, thank you to all of the speakers, to Melissa, Maria, Olivia, Dean, and Heather, who have made this possible in our new virtual environment, and to you, our audience participants that joined us today. Goodbye.